G'day guys, back again for another Sunday adventure. Hope everybody's well. A few people probably got their questions going and a few people had their early antics as well. So let me just straighten this out. My spitter, as they call it. Hope the audio's coming in through fine. It was playing up a bit earlier, so I was trying to get it to sort of settle down, or sort of, I don't know what it was actually doing. I had to get out of StreamYard, go back in and whatever. It's never a straightforward thing. Oops, let me just sort it. The early bird. Oh, you're not a bird. That early bird. Or the second. Stuck into him right away, aren't you? God almighty. Yes, I had to sort out my oxalate juice requirements, my brushing of my hair. No, never. Richard is asking, nah, didn't happen, Richard, didn't happen. Nah, didn't happen. And my partner Mira actually said, why haven't you cut your hair yet? And I'll go, well, I'm experimenting. She go, I got that sort of, reaction. Yes, I am. I'm experimenting. I can have my hair a bit longer for a while longer, sort of, until I really upset people. Yeah, we'll see how long it takes. Yeah, exactly. I had to brush it a bit, to get rid of the hippie look. We didn't want to be too feral. I mean, I'm in my mid-50s. I have to sort of be a bit, tiny bit more respectable. It is required. He's a beast, isn't he, Shell? He's an absolute beast. Hi, Mandy. Hi, Richard. Hi, Helmet Blister. Good to see you, mate. In hi, Richard. I'm still waiting on your link. Send it through, mate. I can find you. I can bring you up as a channel, but I can't bring you up as a name. I don't get any because there's too many. For some reason, it's YouTube. A bit of an issue. We are living in troubling times. Does anyone have anything positive to report? I can't get out of the country very easily without incurring massive costs. Yes, unfortunately. So even though I've got a passport, I've had a passport for years since I was a youngster. Unfortunately, I'm stuck for the time being until the new year. So, and then we had the incident up north, so I can't go to the tropics in Australia. And then even Western Australia, that was a bit of an issue. The Premier over there said, no. I know that our Premier in Tasmania was trying to sort of arrange to allow people from Tasmania, or sort of connections between Western Australia and all that. Not going to happen anytime soon. And Dad's still stuck with a cat. My younger sister's cat. For anyone that's new that isn't aware of exactly what I'm talking about. Yes. Yeah, I know. Oh, God. Richard, that T1 and T2, God, Shell gives them a bit of a spanking now and then. They need it, Luke just amuses us. Yes. Oh, there is. Oxalate juice. A few other things. There's plenty of amusing things to keep us going and all that sort of stuff. Yes. Okay. A question, Harry. I've got my B12 and folate levels checked. B12 is good, but folate is very deficient, making me think I probably have an NTHFR mutation. How do you supplement the folate and riboflavin? I wouldn't actually supplement. I'd just actually eat a bit more liver and eggs to sort of get your folate up. That's how I would do it. Do it through the diet. Generally, methylfolate can cause some imbalances, and also in high doses can actually cause deficiencies in B12. It's not the best way to basically deal with folate issues. So eggs, liver, much better. And if you do have the genetic SNP, there's a methylation video that I've actually done, which you may be aware, I hope, and explains the riboflavin deficiency. Get your riboflavin up. I would basically try and get it double the RDA, and it usually corrects most folate and B12 deficiency issues. So the other thing is to support the other pathway with choline, and choline pretty much in liver and eggs again. So that would be my strategy through food. And if you're struggling to get enough, I mean, dairy, like raw dairy's got quite a bit of riboflavin. So if you have 2 glasses of milk, you get your day's worth. Liver is another option. It's a good source of riboflavin, as a number of other animal foods. So I would look at food options first before supplementing. Unless you've got a severe deficiency and you've checked it and all that, yeah, that would be the best way to go. Much healthier long term to basically resolve those things with appropriate foods. So I hope that explains things. The science is in that video. If you haven't seen it, please go and check it out. It's on my channel. It's the first methylation one. The second one will be on choline. I haven't done it yet, or I've done part of it, but I haven't actually put it together properly. So that is to happen. Nothing like a double low. Hello, Daniel. Hey, send me through your URL of your channel. I can insert it in and it will pick up, because otherwise it just doesn't pick up. I just put your name, doesn't work. It just basically brings some other gook stuff, which is very helpful on YouTube's side. Not. So certain names come up immediately, certain names don't. It's just the way the algorithms, I don't know how they basically set it up. So please just send me a URL and I can insert you in there. I've got no problems. You're a pretty good supporter of this channel, so I'm easy with that. For a fellow Kiwi. It's always full moon somewhere on this planet, on this circular planet. You're waiting on Master Harry. What am I, Master Chef of nutrition? You could do actually a nice little take on that. Now, is she? How do you know? You know too much. Are you spying? Well, at least one of us are pantsless, and that's me. Yeah, it's not looking very pretty over there at the moment. It seems there's a lot of upheaval. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things that are really poorly managed on both sides. But anyway, I mean, I always say there's not much difference between a lot of countries. I mean, even if you got two parties, that's a limited choice. Basically, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, smaller parties have no voice, at least in a sort of a parliamentary type democracy where you've got a prime minister. There is a potential to have a bit more representation from smaller organisations in the society and voices to be heard. In a presidential system, it tends to be far more. If you take a look, most of the presidential systems around the world are semi or fully dictatorships of one person. They tend to be very, because at least with a parliamentary system, you can get rid of the prime minister. You can't get rid of the president in any nation. And that's always a difficult choice. And then when you've got a large part of the population manipulated through the media, you can actually limit the amount of voices in the society. It's not a healthy thing because ultimately it leads to very fractious sort of politics, and it just creates a lot of issues in society. So, but that's my take. I mean, there will be people that will argue about that a presidential system is much better. I tend to disagree, and I can point to all the actual dictators like Saddam Hussein, who was a president, and most other nations around the world that have got a presidential system and tend to have much more authoritarian type structures in their politics. You take a look at India, never had a dictatorship. It's a parliamentary system. The head of state is just a sort of has a role, but it's still a parliamentary system, which basically means that you got a lot of voices there that are competing voices, and it makes it much more difficult for a strong man to take over. So it's a much healthier system long term. Not perfect. No system is perfect. Let's just be blunt about it. No system is perfect. Humans are pretty much the most incapable species of creating a perfect system. We never have. It's always basically an improvised system that works for a certain period of time, and then if it doesn't work, it creates upheaval and people sort of become rebellious or whatever. So it's just the nature of the beast. The only stable societies we ever had were tribal societies where we had direct control. We, the commons, had direct control over our destiny, and there was no reason to rebel against ourselves. Now, would there be? No. So, and when you give too much power to a small group of people, they tend over time to become very corrupted. It's just if you can't have enough checks and balances, those people will corrupt the system or corrupt the society one way or another, unfortunately. So it's just, yes. Yes, it is. It is actually morning. It is a beautiful morning, actually. The sun's out. So I did go out a bit earlier, but I won't get a chance until lunchtime when this live stream will be over. Oops. Refreshing. Still waiting. No. It's just been brushed down to look a bit more tidy. That's all. He did? Was he drinking? Or were you confused? Are you drinking? Yes. And high honest. That's okay. Cruisy. Any way you want to do it. Does he now? You guys are sort of in private chats, sort of exposing yourselves, showing yourselves what's happening. Seems a lot of information out there. And how come you're missing out on this action, Shell? Ah, good. That's good to hear. Yes, one step closer to, yeah, congrats. Yes, we need more people with knowledge in those sort of areas in the sciences to combat the misanthropists and the lunatics out there that, or the, let's say, some people that have strayed from reality. I know. That's why I'm saying you're missing out on all this action these boys are involved in. Must be part of the Discord or, you know, sort of private chats. Not sure. But I think you're missing out. You should speak to Kitty. Maybe she can hook you up with some of this action. I don't know. Oh, I love double hellos. Nothing like a double hello. And Luke can't eat anything overly sweet without thinking I'm slowly killing myself. Okay. It's one way of seeing it. Yeah, well, I mean, we're born with a certain level of mitochondria, and the more assaults, and it's not only dietary assaults, there are chemicals, there are pesticides, there are mold, there's all sorts of things in our environment that assaults our cells, our mitochondria. So over time, we damage more of those nanomotors, the segments, the electron chain segments, and we lose energy. We lose the capacity to heal ourselves, to repair ourselves, and over time we start declining. Others more rapidly than others. You know, it depends how much damage they're doing and what length of time. Some of it's reversible, some of it's not. You know, really hard once you've done a lot of damage, but it can be done. You know, at least you can probably add a decade of life extra to yourself, maybe more. It depends. Some of this area is sort of uncharted. And I mean, I'm in the early stages of experimenting on myself in some regards. So, you know, there's no science out there. So all we've got is anecdotes and, you know, trial and error that people have applied here or there. So that's all we can do at this stage. That sounds like a perfect combination, Daniel. Perfect combination. Yes, yes, I have to say. cool. I was going to try upping my liver some more. Yep. Yeah. Look, I know the Greeks tend to, well, in the 70s and 80s when I lived in Greece, um, I was born in Australia, but I was living in the 60s. I was born, but I sort of moved to Greece in the 70s as a younger person, and left as a young adult in the mid 80s. So pretty much saw a very different perspective of what the real Mediterranean diet is. And there were plenty of offal shops all over the place, let alone sort of outlets that are called psistaries. I actually worked at a psistaria. Psistaria means a griller, because basically Greeks have been grilling meat since antiquity. And you can check my video that I've actually done on the ancient Greeks and the N15 isotope analysis. I mean, yes, they do nowadays eat far more plants than they used to in the past. And I can attest to that when I was over in Greece a couple of years back. It's not exactly the, seed oils are used, more refined sugars are used. They've really bastardized the actual traditional Greek diet, unfortunately. The diet that I remember back in the 70s and all that was very much pastoral and pastoral meat-based with some seasonal vegetables. That was it. And seasonal fruit. You did not have all year round these sort of foods, and a lot of things that were pickled and stuff like that for the winter months. But, these tend to be low glycemic stuff. So the diet in Greece now, because of tourism and that exploded in the 80s onwards, pretty much has sort of bastardized the diet over there. It's more, especially on the islands, it's made more for the tourism dollar, unfortunately, so a lot of Greeks still eat at home, which is good. So it's one thing, but people in Athens and things, you can actually see the differences. You go to sort of areas like islands and more smaller towns and cities where you have far less disease. And then you go to big centers like Athens, Patra, Thessalonica, and all that, where people are eating a lot of fast food. There's a lot of fast food outlets using seed oils and stuff like that. And the health issues are much more pronounced. So, and also the weight issues. You can still go to the smaller towns and still see a lot of lean people, thin people. But you go to Athens and you'll see a lot of fat people. Not as bad as America, or the US, or other parts of the world, but they've adopted some of those bad habits, unfortunately. So it's just the way it is. And I know people used to consume a lot of liver. I mean, we used to have friganella and cucurezzi and all this sort of stuff. Friganella, just these small bits on a skewer, and it's just small bits of grilled liver. And you put a bit of lemon juice on, and you actually dip them in lemon juice with, it's got, sometimes they use oregano, but it's the other one, oh God. Anyway, there's a number of different herbs that they actually use, and so that's the sort of, to give it a bit of a flavor and things like that. Rosemary, that's it, rosemary. Actually, this week I did actually a beautiful sort of roast with rosemary and salt and pepper. That was nice. So yeah, and that's what they use with liver, and it's sort of the sort of the approach. And people used to have tripe in the morning for breakfast, and liver. There was actually, in our city of about 50 odd thousand people, in every square, which is about 5 or 6 squares in the city, there was about 1 or 2 tripe shop outlets. So it was quite popular back then in the 70s. They sort of declined as we got into the 80s, as food preferences started to shift and more commercial shit was starting to change. I actually saw some of that transition from the 70s to the 80s. Also, a lot of the actual sort of dairy foods were all raw from the mountains around where my parents originally, their ancestry comes from. It's just basically all pastoral. So they have all these raw cheeses and raw yogurts and stuff like that. And I used to go and get these really thick. You needed a spoon to spoon it out. It was so thick, those yogurts, no water and crap. Those were real nice. And I used to love the lamb yogurts, or some of the goat ones as well. And yeah, it was a completely different type of food that you were getting, really high nutrition. These are the sort of things that I miss, that even some Greeks now miss, especially in the big cities, which is unfortunate. So yeah, it's just a bit like that. We'll check out the methylation video. Yep. Still need to get, you need to do a sort of a general DNA test, because I'm going to be doing in the future. I mean, yes, I do work. I've got a day job, and which makes it very hard for me to do a lot of things. But over this coming year, I'll be doing small little videos talking about a number of these ailments and a number of the genes to look at, to basically, and then you'll be able to look at and say, okay, I've got this underlying thing. How can I mitigate it? And I'll provide mitigation strategies, and that will be my sort of approach. It won't be very sciencey, and that'll be deliberate, because the majority of people won't benefit from that. If they want, they can just go to someone else for their sciencey stuff. I sort of tended to have a leaning towards that and stuff that I did with Bart as well. But I've sort of want to move away from that approach, because it doesn't really help anyone. Sometimes I think it confuses people more than anything else. So, yes. Am I? Oh, thank you. I try to be. Funny thing about me, while I enjoy sweet stuff, we know, I don't randomly crave or think about it. Oh, that's good. That's good. Craving for savory, fatty types of... Look, there is a difference between men and women. Yes, there are some variations, like the U-type curve. There are always going to be outliers. But generally speaking, most men prefer savory and sort of salty things, where women prefer more sweeter things. It's just one of those things. It's because of the fat stores that women have, and they have a higher requirement for energy. And I usually say, if you want to blunt your sweet tooth as a woman, consume more fat than what men do. Men don't need as much fat. They need more protein. Still need fat for energy, but the composition of 1-to-1 and less than 1, so 1.1 to 0.8 for women in terms of fat and protein, is that sort of difference. So, yes. So women do much better on, 20 to 25% at max when it comes to protein. Men seem to do above 25%, anywhere between 25% up to 35%. So, and it can vary. Genetics, there's a lot of factors. So, in that regard, some do better on more leucine, some do, and it has to do with the body composition, a lot of other factors at play as well. How much physical exercise you're doing. Yep, a lot of factors. Soft, sugary, fruity candy could get the better of me still. You fucking girl. Sorry, just joking. Look, there's a mate of mine's a bit like that as well. He likes a bit more sugary stuff. So, he's my best mate actually. So it's a bit like that as well. There's going to be, as I said, outliers. people that really like a lot of salt, or the majority are just savory and salty in the sort of general terms. It's going to be people that really like a lot of salt, and then there's going to be people that really like a lot of, and the same thing with women. Majority of women will be more of a sweet tooth for the energy because of bigger fat source, and there will be those outliers as well. It's just the nature of the way we humans are. So yep, we all did that. Even in the past when consuming junk food, I was obsessed with salty chips. Yep, I was as well. God, I used to go through nuts and salty chips, all that beautiful acrylamide and all those, beautiful seed oil cooked crispy chips. Salty crispy chips. Yes, been there, done that. Yes, I used to go through bags of chips. I could sit in front of the TV with nuts and chips all night. God, those were the days. God almighty. And why not? Hey, I could declare something, get a few rabble rousers out there to sort of take over. Want to volunteer? Never say never. Thank you, T1. That T2's really bad. He's nasty, isn't he? Trying to, you've destroyed my dreams. You've killed my dreams, you bird brain. It doesn't surprise me. It's a Monty Python thing. With those two. Oops. Oh, no. Oh, fuck. StreamYard. Don't do it to me. Where was I? There it is. Yeah. I used to feel guilty as well for a few seconds until I hit the next pack. Yeah. God almighty, I used to. Yes. A very bad boy. Yes. They like to peck, especially T2. Yes. Sounds like a lot of us. Yeah, they're sort of a yummy sort of candy type thing. Yep. Yeah, there we go. I'll just bring those up. Come on. What is it doing? Don't fail me. If we drop out, you know what's happened. StreamYard's just done a bugger. There they are. It's that sort of stuff. A very, very. Allen's is a well-known Australian brand. Yes. So is that going to come up as a image? Yeah. So there's the Allen's ones. Yeah, that's the sort of stuff you're talking about. The funny thing is, when my father had a corner shop years ago, as in the early sort of mid sort of early mid type 70s up until before we left for overseas, I used to sometimes at night I would go down and actually steal some of these. Yeah, I know, bad boy. So I've been doing it to myself for a very, very long time. My mother used to get really upset with me. So that's what they are. Yeah, sort of. Not exactly like gummy bears. They do have like a sugar coating on the outside. It's a sort of a different thing. They're sort of very squashy and very elastic type. The inner part, it's sort of a rubbery with a sort of a coating. Hard to describe. I think I may have described it sort of. We all do. Okay, yeah. I think it actually may have it may have been an original French type thing anyway. Yeah, I think so. Something along there. Yes. Okay. Me too. Now I've got it going. Yes, yes, interesting. We could actually have a motor race. My nanomotors are faster than yours. G'day, mate. It's good to see you. Just keep an eye on that T1 out there. You know, he's trolling around the Perth suburbs. Piranha. Interesting. Tastes like chicken. Yeah, I mean, this last week, you guys, I said we had those big steaks. This week, we just went for lamb and sort of a combo of lamb and pork strips. They were nice because they were all very fatty, the pork ones. Yeah, so I really enjoyed those. Nice barbecue. Talked a bit of shit with my mate. Talked a bit about some of his intrigues with his business and all that, what they've been doing, turnover and shit like that, as you do, as I do anyway. So, yes. Yeah, not much intramuscular fat. Yep. Okay. Yeah, look, if you're throwing in a lot of dairy and you're getting a lot of dairy fat and all that, so it's, I know a lot of the pastoral societies, they tended to consume organ meats combined with some meats, because it was also the expense and stuff like that, with dairy. So it was this sort of combination. Yes. Okay. You're spending $300 a week. Good. On meat. Oh, is this because of the supply chain? It's making it very expensive, I suspect. God almighty. I mean, even though we've had lockdown down here, prices haven't shifted at all. The actual price for meat here is more or less the same. I haven't noticed any change. So, and some of the items even got cheaper, which was surprising. It's probably because we're not exporting them out of Tasmania to other parts of Australia. So I don't know what's happening in other parts of Australia, but I know that because Tasmania is a primary producer of a lot of these sort of products, grass-fed products and stuff like that, it may be just because of difficulty getting it out of the state. I may be benefiting in that regard, but I'm not sure about the other states in that regard. So, if anybody else has got any from the other states that are in Australia, what the sort of pricing. Perth doesn't seem too bad either. My sister's she's younger sister's over there, and even in Victoria, my older sister, she hasn't seen any big spikes in prices. So I don't think that seems like Australia's a bit more stable in the pricing arena. It's probably because we produce about 3 times the agricultural products that we consume as a nation. So there's a lot we actually export most of our stuff. 2/3 of our produce gets exported. New Zealand's a bit the same in that regard as well. Small population, big agricultural production, very small part of the population employed in agriculture. It's only a few percentage points, 3.5. I can't remember exactly. It's a small amount. They're all big agribusinesses, massive agribusinesses of hundreds of square meters, or some of them are even a couple of squared kilometers, especially in the north, in Darwin and places like that. You'll have big sort of livestock farms that are just basically big. You can see them from space. That's how big the property is. So, and most of that gets exported out of Darwin, because Darwin's got a very small population. So most of that hits the wharf, the ports, and pretty much gets loaded up on ships and sent to other parts of mostly Southeast Asia, where there's a lot of big population with insufficient protein or high quality protein. So. Yeah, well, that's easier said than done. But you may be able to find a cheaper one on things like eBay or places like that, or similar to that, in this sort of environment. But it's always a bit of a hassle trying to get it at the moment with all the lockdowns and all the extra other restrictions and stuff like that. So it doesn't make it easy. So I don't envy Shell. Yeah, I think she would love to, but yeah, it's a sort of a bit of a hassle, a lot of these sort of things. Yeah, it's good to have a variety of things. I have similar things. I've got, beef, chicken, seafood, liver, all sorts of things in my freezer. So that's one thing I need to take out tomorrow, a bit of liver, because I only had one day last week. So I had a bit left over from the previous week, and so I didn't bother. So, but this week I'll take out about 200. It's about 220 grams a pop, and I'll cook it up. I'll have half of that one day, and I'll have some other, probably a steak with that, and then 2 days later I'll warm up the liver with cook a steak and have that together. I don't actually. It's a beef steak that I usually have it with, but sometimes I will have it with other meats. Depends. Okay. Yeah, look, it affects people differently. Sometimes people's ability to recycle bile can also be an issue there as well. So, and then there are other people that just don't seem to, even though they sort out their bile issues if they've got any. So, and that's pretty much either with bile salts combined with MK4 and milk thistle to sort of sort all that, any malabsorption issues. If people have got any of that, that's what they should do. But yeah, some people do seem to, I'm sort of most of the day, even today, because I'm regular. I go once every day to the toilet, and it's usually anywhere between a 4 or a 3. So I've sort of I've never had any of these transition issues or whatever. So I've got no idea in that regard. To be honest, I can only go from looking at some of the research that I've looked into and then go, okay, there's this issue here. I sort of resolved a lot when I was doing my keto days and low carb days. I resolved most of these issues back then, not under carnivore, but under. And I always say to people, maybe I think Bart said something about transitioning really fast from a SAD diet to a carnivore diet. You're creating a lot of disruption in your gut microbiome. There's a sort of a transition period. It can take quite a few months or even a year, where I think if you've gone like me, high fat Mediterranean, then a low fat, then a keto, then back to low carb, then slowly eliminating more and more plants, and then just sort of drifting towards carnivory, in a certain way. I think that yeah, I did invite Jared. He's got a link. He's not in the stream, so let me do that again, just in case I've had a few issues in the let's try this again. I'll send it through now, Jared. Because look, I'm not sure. I may have forgotten. Honestly, I may have actually forgotten to send it through. So you've got it, mate. So just use it and come on. Where was I now? Yeah. So when it comes to things like that, I didn't. It was a smooth transition for me, and sometimes it may mean I know that. Stephanie Keto Person, she's basically done things like she's added a few to some of her clients, some plant products to sort of transition those people, and they've had less issues. Look, we're not like the Vegetard, the Church of Anorexia Vegana that basically has this ideological. At the end of the day, we know that animal products are more optimal, but you may need to transition yourself with some plants or stuff like that to transition yourself, and stick to things like, zucchinis or pumpkins or sweet potatoes, some things that are going to be less problematic. They are cooked. They're not raw. Do not touch raw stuff. Raw fibrous stuff is damaging. to your colon. Not a good thing. It rips it in. It's got all these little hooks. If you go under an electron microscope, that's why people on a very high fibrous diet, they end up with diverticulitis and all these other issues, gut issues. So do not. So use less problematic, always cooked, these vegetables, carrots and stuff like that, and just cook those and just transition with that sort of stuff for a while, add a bit here and there and allow your gut microbiome to shift in that regard. They're not optimal foods, but if it makes it for a smoother transition, we're not a religious cult here. At the end of the day, I suspect that even people, as they move north into the Arctic, like the Inuit and people like that, they would have adjusted over time as well, but they had a long period of time to adjust. So I don't think jumping, especially when you look at, if you go and check my discussion piece where I've got the myths and falsehoods of veganism, there's some information there that talks about Prevotellin, talks about bifidobacteria, the different types of bacteria and how some of them are inflammatory from the plant when you eat plant foods, and some of them when you're eating animal foods, they are anti-inflammatory. So, but when you're shifting your gut microbiome, you can have a lot of disturbances. So that could be another factor, but there also could be liver issues as well, as I said, or bile malabsorption, stuff like that. So that can be a factor as well, So it's, you sort of have to sort of look into it and play around with it a bit, experiment.
Hey, Harry.
G'day, mate. How's it going? Good to see you.
Not too bad. How are you?
Always good, mate. Always good.
I'm glad that I got in. You're just making me appreciate my presence here. It's a privilege, not a right.
There you go. Oh, look, I may have forgotten. But
for the grace of Harry go I on his stream.
Yes. There you go. Yes. By the grace of, yes, the Tassie Devil, Harry. Have not tried raw fat yet. There's nothing wrong. Yellowy, like it's grass fed. This sort of yellowy stuff is really nice, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So
usually, it's the yellower stuff tends to come out of an older animal. Usually,
precisely.
If you're getting grass-fed meat that's not really yellow with fat, it may just be a young animal. It might not mean that it wasn't fed grass.
Yeah, that's true as well. It's a bit like what we call most, like older lamb, which is mutton, and mutton tends to have a much nicer taste as raw if it's grass fed, So yes, there can be, but it's always, exactly. It's always, trying to get find a butcher that I usually call a butcher for certain items as well, and I do go to IGA stores, which get a lot of stuff from the Signet butcher. So they actually bring a lot of the stuff into the city, and it's all grass-fed down there. It's all, because these people are a bit alternative. So they really basically go out of their way to create a lot of good products along those lines. And so some of the IGA stores will sell a lot of this grass-fed, grass-finished, and butchered from the Sydney butcher. And so if you've got contacts down that way, you can sort of try and actually source trimmings, fat trimmings, and a whole lot of other things. So that's another option. There's a few outlets here and there. Some of the city butchers that are still in existence. I know there are few and far between nowadays, but the limited ones that are around, they tend to source a lot of their produce from there and from the northwest of Tasmania. So for Tassie people in Australia that are interested in those sort of areas, that's where some of the best sort of grass-fed meat comes from. These are wet areas. They're not dry areas. They're all year round. With good vegetation. So you really get the quality's very different than you'll get on the east coast of Tasmania, which can be a bit drier on the, in some cases. And that's why they tend to not have any beef on the east coast. It's only basically lamb, nothing else. You won't find anything else. Lamb, goats, those sort of things, but primarily lamb. Anybody that knows Tasmania? Anyway, let's move on. On the live, is Harry half an hour behind on the live stream? Yeah, probably.
Except for that comment.
I'm at the end now. Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, please hit the like and the sharing. Be nice.
Every time I see that, I have to quickly check if I remember to like the stream, but I did this week. Even before I was sure if I'd even get on, I still liked the stream.
So yeah, grass-fed butter is going to be higher in the sort of omega 3s. It's going to be higher in the fat-soluble vitamins. I mean, if you go back to one of the people that influenced me about a decade ago after my cardiovascular issues was, Weston A. Price. And he had his Activator X formula, which included, yes, sort of a butter, but that's not butter.
No,
butter's hiding.
This is a new kitty.
You got a new kitty?
Yeah, we got a pair from a litter, so they can play with each other. So this is Bacon, and her sister is Eggs. So we have bacon, butter,
bacon and eggs. Nice. What a combo.
And that's Bacon there, the black one. She's much more outgoing. Her sister's probably hiding somewhere.
So Eggs are hiding in the corner.
Yes. Eggs is fragile, delicate, like eggs.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so pretty much like Weston A. Price, he used to get it so you've got summer and early autumn, that sort of period before winter, where you've got a lot of grass that's actually grown because of the rain in spring and winter. So you'll get all this grass that grows and all that. And it depends on the elevation as well, how, but if they're grazing for all that period of time, because in winter, nowadays, not in the past, but nowadays, they still use some grains here and there, unfortunately, in dairy farming and stuff like that. So, in particular, through some of the winter months. So, but, Weston A. Price sort of provided that information on the best places, the best seasons and stuff like that, if anybody wants to look at that.
Yeah, grass-fed butter, anecdotally, just it tastes and looks and smells nicer as well. If it's real grass-fed butter, it will probably be yellower than conventional butter. So often it's not a guarantee. They can add things to make it yellow, but if you just peel the package back a little bit, the foil on it to check the color, that's the first thing I do with butter. And the next thing is smell it.
Yeah, I do a bit of the smell test myself.
It should almost smell like pasture, right? Like it's
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's something that just people need to keep in mind. Okay, Sam also mentioned, did he? Where did he mention that? Did I miss that? Probably did. I'll just cover this for a sec. Yeah, it's absolute friggin' nonsense. You know, God almighty. These people are just absolute ridiculous. You know, viruses, look, if you want to eliminate all viruses on the planet, just nuke the whole planet. See, the vegan solution is, if you want to get rid of suffering, let's kill all the animals and all the humans. Let's genocide everything. You will eliminate suffering. You will definitely eliminate suffering by doing that. That is the end result of that logic.
You can't escape truth of Buddhism is life is suffering. So without life, there would be no suffering, right?
Exactly. So. Yeah. Life is a cycle of suffering, happiness, joy, all sorts of terror. If you're an animal being chased by, a lion or a tiger, at the end of the day, that is what life is. That is, the natural cycle of life and death, the carbon cycle. These people have grown in hermetically sealed cities, completely divorced from nature, have no relationship. And as a consequence, their snowflake existence and mentality makes them think that you can avoid suffering. You can't. It's part of life. It's an important, and it also is an important component in sort of maturing as a person, as a human being, So, adversity does.
Yeah, there's no limit to the depth of the useful idiot elements in veganism.
Exactly.
They're just, yeah. I don't understand how anybody can think that they're honestly supporting a radical or rebellious way of life or way of eating when it's sponsored to the degree that it is by the moneyed interests that it is.
The Tassie Devil cult. Just clarifying that point.
So Shell's asking the kitty's name. Oh, she's finding pieces of paper to play with, I guess. Her name is Bacon, and she's about 9 or 10 weeks old. And she's a little menace who is so cute.
Okay. Now, if I've missed anybody's question, I do apologise, and just put it back in there and ask me again, because StreamYard can somebody sort of throw me around. I'm trying to new cases of salmonella in being blamed on US chicken. Look, there's actually, we've had more cases of salmonella in bacterial sort of in vegetables in Australia. Mm-hmm. We've had withdrawn vegetables, and a lot of people also getting food poisoning from vegetables. Bacteria will stick to anything, guys.
I got food poisoning from leafy greens, packaged leafy greens from the supermarket, more times than I've ever had food poisoning from meat.
I've never had from meat, but I've had from spinach and kale in the past.
Yep.
And it was fun. Let's put it that way. That was in my keto days where I was doing spinach and kale. Yeah, stupid. Yeah, I know, but we were all ignorant back then.
Sorry, I'm a little bit distracted here with managing around my cables.
Oh, well, it's pussy galore in there.
Yep.
I don't know which doctor has recommended. Not an issue at all. I mean, Parkinson's disease is a lot of people that actually use phosphatidylserine or phosphatidylcholine and omega-3 fatty acids from things like cod liver oil or stuff like that, and increase their phospholipids in their brain, actually tend to do much better. Actually, high doses, 600 milligrams or more of phosphatidylserine in a dose, which is basically a nasal one. I'm trying to get it from a person. because that's what the experimental evidence shows from a Tel Aviv Israeli study. And it basically, they use a nasal. There's a company in Israel that actually has developed a nasal system that can actually get it past the blood-brain barrier, and it can also silence genes of a degenerative disease that is similar to Parkinson's. So, what you need to do is get your phospholipids up. So if the doctor said this, God, as an MD that's actually saying something logical, fuck me. That's good. Good to hear. But yeah, you sort of need to get those phospholipids up and support your brain function. So yeah, and the Israeli studies, they actually showed definitive reversal and silencing of genes. We're talking about people that have got a genetic, Ashkenazi Jews that have got a genetic predisposition. That's radical. That's replicatable. They can replicate that on every single person. That is replicatable truth. That's not a rat study. Most stuff that they do, which is in rat studies, is not replicatable in humans. And usually 90-odd% of most of the drugs fail when they go to human trials. That's why I say, don't bother me with rat studies. Which a lot of, unfortunately, even some people in the carnivore community tend to be fixated on rat studies. Far too much. How important do you think is xenoestrogens in the US convention of meats, conventional meats? I'm thinking of buying lean conventional meats and supplementing with grass-fed suet. Yep, you can do that. Yep.
Yeah, like the xenoestrogens in meat are orders of magnitude less than what you're going to get from plants regardless. And any decrease between grass-fed and conventionally raised is probably not what actually makes it grass-fed preferable for people. I would say that would be a good call to get the grass-fed suet for the fat-soluble vitamins. Jeez.
Yeah. Bit of traffic out there.
Apparently. I just close my window here.
Yeah, it's very small.
And the problems with conventionally raised beef, any sort of toxic compounds that may bioaccumulate tend to be in the fat as well. So getting lean meat that way, if you are trying to minimize those things, is probably the right call.
I'm sort of more concerned. I'm less concerned about the xenoestrogens because they're not. Remember, the animal's liver will detoxify the xenoestrogens. So when they come in, like our liver, we detoxify a lot of this sort of stuff. So it's not going to be massive like you would find in a plant food, which basically is part of that plant food, those sort of estrogenic type compounds. So I would be less concerned about meats. But there are issues like with glyphosate and other things like that can bioaccumulate in fat tissue, and that's where it can be a problem, and that can actually wreak havoc with your gut microbiome. And the reason for it is because it's simple. It's not because it's some sort of magical thing about glyphosate, or it's so, it's basically that it's been registered. They've got a patent as an antibiotic. It's got actually an official patent in the US, in a number of other countries, as an antibiotic. So, can you imagine now you're not consuming the occasional antibiotic when you need it because you've got a severe staph infection or some sort of thing that could kill you, and you've got no option, and then you have to sort of then go on probiotics and sort of restore your gut microbiome, especially if you don't have an appendix where you store your copy of your own microbiome. The old cecum for the apes out there, just, you apes, that vegan apes that, still think you've got a cecum, just a reminder. And the key thing, that is the problem with glyphosate, because you're basically putting something which is equivalent to an antibiotic every single day in your mouth. And that's a problem, glyphosate. So, but then again, there's also environmental glyphosate that can act as an xenoestrogen, and also can accumulate in environments like some of the councils, local governments in different parts of the world use glyphosate to kill weeds. around the roads and different places now. A lot of kids are out there playing, and being exposed, and that's not good. That's another problem that's being ignored completely. So there's a lot of issues with our environmental, and things that we're putting into the animals as well, and over plants, because remember, a lot of the plants are sprayed with glyphosate as well. So
and don't kid yourself that just washes off.
It doesn't. It accumulates. So you can bet your bottom dollar you'll get more exposed from eating plants in terms of glyphosate than animal products. So take your pick.
Yeah.
But
yes, that's the correct approach with lean conventional meat and grass-fed suet if you're trying to
get
the least of the bad stuff and the most of the good stuff.
Sam also mentioned DHA, but cholesterol is also good, possibly. There's nothing wrong with cholesterol. The body will regulate it, and it should never be regulated by external toxic medicine in that regard. But when it comes to DHA, you should get it from good quality animal products, in particular seafood, and good quality cod liver, which I've already mentioned, the Rosetta type cod liver, which is the best.
Mm-hmm. That's the stuff that's actually sold and stored refrigerated, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's cold. It's supposed to be cold processed and all this stuff along the way. So
exactly. Yeah. They have another product which is really good for the brain, and I've actually got it for Dad. And I've actually got some, but I haven't actually tried it myself. It's in my fridge, and it's. I'll actually grab it. Give me a sec.
Is he gone? I can take a break. No, that's as long as that lasts. Yeah, that's the stuff that Frank Tufano suggests. The Rosito refrigerated wild cod liver oil, I believe it is. Yeah, questions for me. Bring them in. I'm watching the chat live. Harry's behind. Monkfish.
Oops.
Favorite color? Cool. I don't know.
What's that?
I like color, period. Luke was asking what my favorite color is.
Okay.
I find it very depressing and boring shopping for brand new clothing at men's stores that are all just like black and gray and blue, dark blue. That's it, just monochrome.
I actually like what I'm wearing, navy blue.
Yeah. Just not all the time. It's funny. It's funny to me how hard it is to find good colors to wear. I'm taking that as I'm immediately going with into fashion. With Luke just asking what my favorite color is. I don't think I have a favorite color. I like certain color combinations.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a real good supplement in terms of people that may have issues with their brain and stuff like that. So it's a rat fish.
That's the one that Frank Tufano used to talk about, Rosita brand.
Okay, well,
specifically just with it being minimally oxidized.
It's the best products out there in that regard. They come in packaged in cold packaged sort of stuff, and that's the sort of stuff years ago that I actually consumed, and I was sort of influenced by people like Chris Kresser. We're talking about back in my paleo days, which is quite a few years back now. We're talking about nearly about a decade ago. So 9 years to be more precise, and it was basically because Chris actually endorses that brand, and he was the one that put me onto that brand, and I've basically used that brand for many years now.
Yep.
in that regard. So
I would have been interested for Bart and Pim to have tested that one for aldehydes when they did that experiment.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
That's one that's
exactly.
specifically marketed to be as minimally oxidized as possible to get it as fresh as you possibly can.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. Maybe because they were just looking at, the run of the mill. They weren't actually looking at cod liver oils at all. They were actually primarily focused on fish oils.
Yep.
So,
But the way Bart talks about it is such that any packaged fat or packaged oil should be avoided like the plague because of possible trace amounts of aldehydes, and I'm not sure that's fair for every supplement out there.
I don't think so as well, in that regard. And aldehydes, I mean, yes, the majority of them are problematic. I always say, what describes an aldehyde? It's a dehydrogenated alcohol. Okay? But not all dehydrogenated alcohols are bad for you. So not all aldehydes are bad for you, but it depends. It depends on the shape of the aldehyde. It depends on a whole lot of the structure of the aldehyde and stuff like that. And so, yes, all the aldehydes that are coming from a processed, where they're damaged, broken, they are problematic. They basically tend to bind in certain ways in certain places on lipid membranes and tend to damage them or rip them apart. And that's where the problem. They're far more reactive, but they are, they come from as byproducts of oxidation, and heat. But this sort of product isn't heated; it's all cold. It's not basically. It doesn't go through a sort of a refining system like all the other stuff go, and then they sort of add vitamin E and all this sort of stuff to sort of quasi stabilize. But that's just dealing with the rancidity. It's not dealing with basically the aldehydes that have been produced. And that's the problem with all these products, the general commercial products. They tend to be very damaged. But if you overcook any sort of meat or whatever, you're probably going to generate some aldehydes. I mean, the worst one that most people are aware of is formaldehyde.
Right. So I mean,
but small amounts won't kill you.
I'm not at all trying to say that Bart is wrong with his cautioning about the dangers of aldehydes either. Just that I think that his implication of the ubiquity of them being present for everything like that is a little bit of a stretch.
I think the overwhelming majority, they'd be both correct.
Yes,
I would not disagree with them. But there's going to be outliers here and there, and even they, to some extent, acknowledge this. I don't think I've heard, because I've actually spoken to Bart, and he actually says, some of this stuff is okay. And I tend to, as I said, I used to use a lot of cod liver oil. I don't really now. And I use it for important strategic reasons. Like I will combine, things like astaxanthin and a low dose vitamin E when I'm using that sort of stuff. So I will do it slightly different than most people will do it. Why? Because
what's the first compound you said? Astaxanthin?
Well, astaxanthin refreshes the fatty acids and sort of stabilizes them and refreshes them. And then on the other hand, so, and that's important. And vitamin E actually acts a vitamin E complex. You don't want to basically just tocopherol. You want a vitamin E complex, which basically provides different lengths, because these tocopherols and tocopherols tend to have different lengths, and those different lengths are able then to embed themselves into cell membranes and provide different levels of antioxidant capacity, which is basically different capacity to electron donor to stabilize things that have been, affected in one way or another. So that's pretty much it. Now I've lost my. Let me just flow through here for a sec. I'm just going to go to the bottom for a second, then I'll come up until I find a spot where I wasn't. Okay, so that was the xenoestrogen one. So then Luke actually mentioned you, and is the monkfish stuff. And we'll go here. What brand of coconut oil does Frank like? I've got no idea. Is he going back to coconut oils and stuff like that?
I don't know. I heard something about him including some plants. I haven't watched his content in quite a while.
Yeah. Look, I don't think you need coconut oil because there are a number of issues with people. Probably he's got less issues because he's coming from the southern part. He's an Italian background, comes from southern Italy, so he'd have some Greek genes in there, and most of those people have sort of a low susceptibility to basically salicylates in the actual, which is the biggest problem with a lot of Northern Europeans that I don't advise because of salicylate issues. So that's one proviso. Then the second thing is that, coconut compared to, let's say, butter, ghee and stuff like that. What's the difference? I mean, first of all, it doesn't have any fat-soluble vitamins. You don't have short chain. Why am I supportive of dairy as dairy fats? Because they've got short chain fatty acids. They've got also, if you want more like good levels of medium chain triglycerides, you can actually get it from goat milk and goat products because they're very competitive when it comes to coconut oil. In terms of lauric acid and all that. A lot of them were actually discovered in the actual milk of and the composition of the medium chain triglycerides is much more similar to that of human milk. So much better to get it from dairy rather than get it from coconut, which is much too high a level. And even though I haven't done the video yet, there is evidence to show that high levels of MCT can cause things like asthma type symptoms and all sorts of other allergy type symptoms. So they're not a good thing. Let's put it that way. Your body can't handle, has a threshold. Now, some of the islanders in the Pacific where and Southeast Asia where they've consumed palm oil and coconut oil for many years, for a very long time in their history, they've actually got really good transcription factors to deal with a lot of this sort of stuff. So they're adapted. So it's less of an issue. I'm not sold on coconut oil for the majority of humanity. And there are ketone esters and ketones from a keto diet that can actually do wonders for your brain anyway. And people say, well, coconut and MCTs really, have been proven. Show me. There was a lady who's a doctor and she actually put her husband on MCT oils and from Miami, and she basically showed, I forget her name, but she actually showed some level of reversal of his condition, but not absolute reversal and not saving him at all. Had he been on a ketogenic diet, I think he would have been better off rather than just taking MCTs on a standard diet. Getting all that sugar out, it seems that to settle the brain down and allows the brain to heal much better. So, throwing MCTs isn't a panacea. Let's put it that way. Okay. Blue Wakes. What he's called, I'm not sure.
We were just talking about color when we were talking about color.
Okay. Oh, color. Oh, color. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, what's this interested with color? Oh, yeah, the earlier stuff. Yeah. Yes, it does. It can affect your mood and stuff like that. Different people has different effects. That's true.
Yeah.
As well. Methylene blue. No idea. I know that the sort of the electromagnetic spectrum, blue light and green light can actually have a deleterious effect on the sort of mitochondria, especially in the evening, because it affects melatonin production. And melatonin, see, what are you doing throughout the day? You're using you're generating a whole lot of ATP, but also you're generating, as a consequence of this ATP cycle, you actually produce a lot of adenosine, and that adenosine basically is what makes you tired in the evening. So you're accumulating more adenosine, and at the same time, because this is how it sort of cycles these sort of nutrients within the mitochondria, and so you're actually, cortisol's coming down, melatonin is going up, and that can be interfered by things like coffee, which is an adenosine inhibitor, but also blue light can actually have an effect on the your melatonin production. And you need melatonin in the evening because melatonin heals and repairs your mitochondria. So it's a potent antioxidant, something like 100 times some people have described it, compared to glutathione in terms of its effects on the mitochondrial health. So yeah, that's how I say. I'm not in terms of color, the color itself, I'm not really sure about the color itself. Maybe it has a psychological effect. I don't know. Too many questions about colors and stuff like that, which I've never really got into things of that sort. So sorry, I can't answer that sort of stuff. And I lost my spot again. Sorry, guys. Freaking hell. Let me just go through here until I find my spot. Yep. Back again. Okay. What did Pim talked about aldehydes today? Okay, I'll check that. I haven't looked at Bart's or Pim's videos. I usually, after my stream, I check them out. After I go for my walk, come back, and then I'll just sit back and have a coffee and then basically check them out. So, and it's 12 o'clock, which means I can actually break my fast and have my coffee, which is cold now, but shit happens.
Yeah, I haven't been home to see their streams yet. I just hopped on here as soon as I got in the door, pretty much.
It can degrade. Problem with canned stuff, you can get some level of degradation of astaxanthin. It's not massive, but you can have some loss in that regard. So it's that reddish strip that's along the sides of different fish. That's another reason why you should never have skinless fish. Why? Because you need that astaxanthin. It's a potent antioxidant. Still want to know if seed oil derived tocopherols are something to be concerned about. I would not get them in seed oils, the tocopherols, as supplements. The palm oil.
He says seed oil derived, so I don't think it means the carrier oil. I think it means making the
it depends. It depends on. Usually the processing of a lot of the seed oil versions is pretty bad. That's the problem. That's why they use it as a cheap thing. They're not going to be using. There is a company in the southern part of California that actually produces rapeseed oil, organic, cold pressed rapeseed oil. It's the only company that I've come across in the world. But it's something that is not necessary. But it does exist. And so I would not basically consume. Look, and that rapeseed oil is probably low in deuterium as well. So it's probably, for vegetarians or vegans, it's probably a good thing. But it's still very high in omega-6s, which can be a problem, especially for those sort of people who can't get enough omega-3s to balance things out. So that's a side issue. But yeah, I would stick to palm oil derived. The reason for palm oil is because the vitamin E in palm oil is a proper complex. It really has all the different elements of the vitamin E complex. So it's a much better product. And the only low dose version that I know of is the Jarrow brand. That's it. So that's your best option in that regard. And I would avoid all the others until somebody can actually point me to something which is better or equivalent. Someone mentioned death by spinach earlier. Yes. If you basically consume extreme levels of oxalate, like there have been people who have juiced multiple times in the day, and they've ended up in hospital with kidney damage. Mm-hmm. And you could die if you don't get onto a dialysis quick enough. So yes, it has the potential, but obviously, if you're out, let's say you're out in some bush area, some distance away from standard medical service or whatever, and you were juicing like mad, and you had a major episode with a kidney problem, you probably would die before they got you to a medical place or flew in a helicopter or whatever, potentially. So I would say, yep, that could be a problem. And it's usually the oxalates that are going to be doing it, ripping your kidneys to pieces. Now, obviously, if you were to give yourself a lot of citric acid, you could probably mitigate the severity. You still get damage, but you may be able to pull out of it, so to speak. So that would be, if somebody has suffered a severe oxalate, kidney damage, the first thing that I'd try to put through to them right after I'd called the medical services would be basically citric acid, even if it's lemon juice, anyway, anything, or just get citric in it any way to help that person to break down the amount of oxalic acid inside the kidneys doing the damage. So, that's all I can think of. Not really. They're bad for rats. As long as you're not a rat, John, I'm not a rat, you're not a rat. And they were given massive doses. It does actually increase nitric oxide synthesis, NAWST. And, most plants have actually got more nitrates than basically, all the green plants that we're talking about. And beets, they got heaps of nitrates in them. Mm-hmm. And they basically do the same thing. They increase nitric oxide synthesis and vasodilate.
You can have cured meats made with celery salt that are technically nitrate-free in terms of there's no nitrates added, there's the ones in the salt.
If I sort of get free-range pork, which is smoked and has zero nitrates. But if it had nitrates and it was smoked and a grass-fed, I'd still buy it. I'm not that concerned from a bit of nitrates, to put it that way. But is it necessary? Probably not. Is it going to kill you? Definitely not. At most, it probably will vasodilate. If you're on a sad diet, you probably need a bit of vasodilation. Plenty of people out there on a sad diet that probably need their blood pressure to come down a bit and vasodilate their blood vessels. So let's not get overly concerned about some of this stuff. And through cans, typically, polyester, acrylic, that's the biggest thing. BPA, it's all these chemicals and stuff like that. It's the reason why I don't usually buy canned stuff, very rarely, So, and I've checked to make sure it's BPA free, all this sort of stuff. But generally speaking, when I get my sardines, I go down to the waterfront, the Hobart waterfront, and they've basically got the sardines there in ice, and I'll get a couple. I'll wrap them in baker's paper, sort of butcher's paper, and basically I used to go down there and then I'll walk home. But nowadays, then when I was working from work, I would go and put it in the fridge at work, because I'd pick them up at lunch, put them there, and then go home with them in the evening. So that's basically what I did, and that is what I sort of prefer, in a sense, rather than basically going for this sort of nonsense in that regard. That a lot of people, I think people consume far too much processed stuff, and it's a problem. It's a problem in that regard, So let's go down.
That being said, I have some canned cod liver oil that I think I might eat later. I've got about another 10 or 15 minutes into here, and then I need to get a meal so I can get to bed.
Yep. Fair enough. Yep. Yeah, more about canning. It's
Harry, I still hear you tap tripping.
That's the other one, actually. I know. Yeah, it's that actually goes. That's a strange one. It goes off on. So yeah, tell me about it. I don't give a shit. Fuck yous. I know that one, and I've got now one in the bathroom as well. I need to go get. Yeah, I only had one washer for the hot water, and I had to fix that one. But now I've got the cold one that's actually playing up from here. I have a tendency, and my father always bitches and moans. He says, "You're always tightening these," because I have a tendency, I put a lot of strength. It's just, I think it may because I do a lot of like wrist exercises, like pressing stuff or weights that
People
I do
are gonna
these.
make jokes, Harry. People are gonna make jokes.
And as a yeah, now I've done it, haven't I?
Harry's recommended wrist exercises.
Yes. Yeah, something like that. So
you over tighten by accident.
Yeah, look, it's just one of my habits. I go through washes like that, like other people go through, other things. So yeah, it's just a bad habit of mine.
And now you're getting asked about what wrist exercises do you do?
It'd have to be Richard, wouldn't it? Fucking Kiwis, they're always, Hey, I don't discuss things about your animal husbandry, you guys.
MCT oil effects on ketone levels specifically. I mean, I know MCT oil is often supplemented by people starting keto just because it's an easy source of fat for their body to be able to burn more readily than to help you get into ketosis. I think that's where most people start with MCT oil and hear about it from. That's certainly where I did anyway. But I don't know about MCT oil specifically affecting ketones like more or less than other lipids. I don't know if you do, Harry.
Look, my sort of view is when it comes to ketones, if you don't have an underlying health issue like, some sort of mental, some sort of brain, some sort of reason to require, why are you chasing ketones? At the end of the day, you can only actually produce at a maximum of about 18% of your energy anyway. Most of your energy is going to come from either glucose produced from gluconeogenesis, and the rest from fats, from fatty acid. And I've already shown with that video that I did with Bart, remember the one that I did about the brain and the fats getting, that our threshold must be much higher because of our larger brains compared to other animals. And so we can't extrapolate from that. But How high it is, we don't know, because that would require to do experiments on humans, put probes in to detect how much is getting past the blood-brain barrier. Because we know some fats do get through. So, and we know that happens in other animals as well. So we know that, this sort of myth that only glucose and ketones can get through the blood-brain barrier is a myth. But how high the actual fatty acids, and the long-chain fatty acids are probably much better. And if you think about it, what does our body do? It stores everything as palmitate, as carbon-16, which you can cleave off for ketones or for short-chain fats. So it doesn't necessarily need to create them as ketones. It can just still use them as short-chain fatty acids, in different ways. So the body, there's a lot that is still mysterious to us in terms of how fats are utilized throughout the body. So, I tend to basically say, feed the body appropriately and let the body regulate itself to a large extent, and just do interventions if you really have to, like supplementation to fix underlying conditions or deficiencies.
Yeah, there does seem to be some indication for and positive anecdotes of people seeking therapeutic ketosis for specific reasons. So for a specific reason, deliberately trying to get your blood ketone reading quite high. But for the purposes of most people approaching ketosis for burning their body fat, weight loss, a few other health benefits, that chasing ketones is sort of a fool's errand, I think.
It is.
You can
And if you want to lose weight,
that doesn't really tell you much.
If you want to lose weight, why are you adding more fat? Try and get more of the fat off your body.
Right. Yeah.
So it makes no logical sense. So it's more for therapeutic reasons, yes, but
and as many people in the chat have mentioned as well, it tends to be has sort of a laxative effect if you don't ease into it.
That's true as well. That's what I'm saying. When it comes to populations, for instance, coconut oil is consumed, like 50% of the diet of some of the Polynesians is coconut oil. But if you were to consume the same amount of calories as a non-Polynesian, you would get a very big laxative effect. So we're not as well adapted. They are. So there are differences, and if you've got Polynesian genes, maybe you can handle that sort of stuff. But we've got European or Central Asian or African, the majority of us around the world, and as a consequence, we handle better these varied types of fats, both short, medium, and long, but in the sort of proportions we find in animal products mainly. That evolutionary for millions and millions of years, and we know that from the N15 isotope analysis, what we've been eating for a very long time. And even the Greeks, yes, they consume some level of dairy and all that pastorally, and it's sometimes hard to discern how much of that is land-based animal or the dairy part. Because some of the fats is more easy to work out in terms of their N15 figure, but it's much harder. It's a bit more blurry. It's a grayer area, So how much is that coming from the dairy, the product of dairiness or pastoralness, and how much is coming directly from meat? Like the early parts actually showed. Like the N15 did show, but that population of Greeks was very much close to the coast, so they tended to basically have more animal, less dairy, more animal. But at the same time, they still had some dairy. Now, what the composition, nobody really knows. But we know that ancient Greeks did consume dairy products and did consume a lot of grilled type meats and stuff like that. It was part of the culture. And right through to the modern era, largely. So I still think, looking at how people ate in the 70s, which was less contaminated by the modern world, I'd have to say that they still consumed far more meat products compared to dairy. But can I prove exactly the exact N15, composition? No, none of us can. We'd have to go get into a time machine and go back. All we can do is from the Iliad, the Homeric epics, and all these poems that show that the composition was much more pronounced to animal products than to the dairy component. But can I prove it either way? No. But still, again, they're animal products. I've got no problems with it. They will have similar N15 sort of profiles because they come from the concentrate in the animal, in a sense. So, but that's all I can say on that. In terms of supplementation, check last week, and I've actually got somebody actually asked me. I can't remember which one it was, whether it was the Eurasian one or the other one, where I mentioned about the electrolytes and stuff like that. That would give you a good understanding. I don't believe in supplementing magnesium. Magnesium tends to basically be, if you're on a let's say a high carbohydrate diet, you will burn through far more magnesium and potassium. Mm-hmm. You just need it for the general. But animal foods, if you're having organ meats and stuff like that, you should get enough in terms of these minerals in your diet. And also, if you're keeping enough sodium to keep all the stuff in between the sort of membrane potential between your cell and your bloodstream to basically keep and check what I said last time, which I went into more detail. I won't be repeating myself.
I think magnesium transdermally from like an Epsom salt bath is probably a better way to get it than by eating it.
Exactly.
I mean, if you can dial it right in, supplementing electrolytes can definitely help some issues. But I think it's like Harry's saying, it's still better to get those things from whole foods, and you can easily throw things out of balance by supplementing too much of magnesium or potassium.
Yeah, I find that it's very easy. It's only when you've got a deficiency you may want a short-term supplement, push up your levels, then push up your sodium to maintain that potential so you don't lose. Because when you dump one type of electrolyte because you want to balance the others, the body will dump the other ones as well.
Yeah.
So if you're deficient in magnesium or potassium, it means you're also deficient in calcium and sodium in the bloodstream. Because that potential between the two, the bloodstream and the cells, has been disrupted in some way, that imbalance.
Yeah.
And so you can have still high blood pressure with low sodium and higher part of the other electrolytes. So, or the other way around, especially if you've got these imbalances that you've created because they're not functioning properly. They're not exchanging fluids properly, and sort of you end up, getting too much fluids potentially in the cell, and that's, if you want to drive that with insulin, you can do it. And that's where you see some of these bodybuilders, they create all these puffy, big muscles that they're just full of water retention,
So that being said, if you are thinking that you have a magnesium problem and you want to try supplementing for a short period to saturate with magnesium, that's not the riskiest one to add, because if you add too much, you'll just shit yourself.
Exactly.
Don't do that with potassium.
Definitely, that potassium can be dangerous in very high doses. Yeah, you can die. That's why they stopped. A lot of countries have actually banned potassium supplements for that reason.
Yeah, pure potassium chloride can be hard to find.
Exactly.
I think it's actually it's lethal injections. I think it's the primary method of action.
Exactly.
For heart rate. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I say to people, you need to consider your energetics, and it should be a much lower level. Most people don't need the high levels that they think they need. They do not need 4,700 unless you're a big guy like probably Sean Baker. He's a big bloke. He probably needs that sort of level. But most other people need much lower levels. So they probably need about anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 per day. And with a couple of steaks, you can actually get that. One big steak will give you about anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000, depending on how big the steak is. Yeah, potassium. Dairy is very rich in potassium.
Mm.
You know, I mean, very low in sodium and very high in potassium. That's another reason why the Maasai bleed their animals to get the sodium in to balance out the potassium, the high potassium levels in the dairy. So, yeah, look, people need to be very careful about experimenting or playing around with electrolytes. They can, there can be a risk. There's a risk factor.
Yeah, and I mean, and before adding any electrolytes, other than salt, I would add salt. I would salt to taste, maybe even take it a little bit further than taste, just to see if you're low on sodium. That would be the easiest one to check for.
Yep, exactly. And people used to consume about 10 times what they consume today. If you've basically had a severe, let's say, chronic dumping of magnesium and potassium, and it's very low levels, and you actually you know that it's been very low levels for a very long time, then you could actually pump up all the electrolytes, get them up to a certain level, and then whatever you get from food, and then just basically consume a bit more salt because you're more low carbohydrate. You tend to basically lose electrolytes much easier because you've got lower insulin, and so as a consequence, the sodium usually will correct. By getting the salt in, you maintain that potential between the membranes, and it doesn't allow the dumping. Because if you dump sodium, you need to dump potassium to maintain that homeostasis. So that's what's happening. And so remember, magnesium is in the cell together with potassium mainly. Remember, magnesium ATP, Mg ATP. So it's required for energy production. That's why it's there primarily. So, calcium and sodium are in the bloodstream. That's where they should be. It's oceanic water. Oceanic water is high in calcium and high. What do you think we developed vitamin D? Vitamin D was a means of actually acquiring calcium when you're a terrestrial animal on the land, no longer in the sea, where it's plentiful. That's the reason why we require vitamin D to absorb basically calcium, from our food, because we no longer live in an oceanic environment, or our cells no longer live, So these are the sort of reasons.
After all that food talk, I think I need to go get a meal.
Okay, I will let you go.
I made it a little bit earlier tonight so that I was able to follow the conversation a little bit better. Not quite as at the end of my fuel tank for the day. But as always, Harry, thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Always enjoy your company.
Yeah, likewise.
And take care, and we'll chat next week.
I'll see you next week.
Try not to forget to send you a link.
That's okay. I'm just glad it didn't take you an hour to see that I needed one.
Okay, take care. See you, mate.
See you, Harry.
Well, back to me. Okay. Oops. Nope. Wrong one. Oops. It bounced. Don't you love it? Oh, God almighty. Where was I? Yeah, exactly. Not a fun time. Nah. Definitely not. Look, I'm going to go further down. If I've missed anything, please just put the question back in there. Yeah, look, I use Epsom salts as well. Much better. Yes, Blinky. Yes. T1 Blinky. Yes, he is. I suspect that's the MCT. Let's throw everything in there. Nothing like cosinoids, prostaglandins, and everything else. Let's try and get it from food, guys. Supplements are not the best option. Let's put it that way. It's like, you need your omega-6s for all these sort of reasons, and you need your omega-3s, but you don't need. You need a certain amount, but the body can manage it all. I mean, we sometimes get too wound up about it in that regard as well. Okay, what would you suppose Europeans can handle gluten bread better than they can handle so-called safe starch like rice or potatoes? Very good point. When it comes to gluten, probably Europe, but they not the doses that we have today. These are all hybridized. If we go back, like Zea bread in Greece, and most of Central Europe and most parts of Europe, because Zea bread actually got around to many parts of Europe with the Roman Empire. But also it was there earlier, but it became very popular in a number of areas in Europe. And Zea bread is a sort of a product that is much lower in in pretty much a tenth of the gluten. It's got more protein, and some of those especially German Dutch type sort of breads tend to be very protein heavy because they come from that original source that they've sort of been. There are variations that have come from that. And they tend to have lower gluten as well compared. Where something like potatoes, that's a nightshade that comes from South America, so it's not something that we're well adapted to in that regard. It's far more problematic, But again, we're talking about people consumed very small amounts of bread. They didn't have large production, big, massive fields like exist today. And so it was a small thing that supplemented their food. It wasn't basically there as their main food. Even my father used to have one slice of that sort of bread as a youngster for breakfast, and that was it for the whole day. And you stuck a whole lot of on that lard, and on top of the lard, a big chunk of cheese. Or it was butter and a big chunk of cheese, one of the two. Later on, people started using olive oil, but olive oil was used more for lighting, and it wasn't used as much for cooking. Some parts of the country it was because there was less access. There was more olive oil compared to, animal type dairy products that could be used for cooking. And so it varied. But primarily in the mountainous areas, and most of the islands, except some islands, the larger islands that had more production, like more areas where they could grow, the more rockier, smaller islands were more animal sort of based goats. Like the longevity place, so-called longevity place, Ikaria is basically just goat herders. That's what they were, goat herders, where if you go to Milos, where my younger sister got married and was living for quite a few years, that area is, you will have some olive trees, olive groves and stuff like that, because it's a different type of island. It's got deeper soils. It's got the capacity to support, more, especially olive trees. And they produce their own olive trees, their own dairy products, and those dairy products they would, on many of the islands, they use a lot of salt. They add, like lemnos and stuff like that. Their dairy products tend to be much more saltier. But in Milos, because they don't need to use as much salt, and they put a coating of olive oil around the outer part, which sort of dries out and sort of becomes like a protective layer. That's what I mean. Those sort of variations are for other purposes. So it can vary. But I would say that there is some adaptability, but not to the levels. We've taken it to an extreme level where it's just beyond a joke. But even again, it's not optimal. Yeah, and lectins from especially nightshades are much more toxic and problematic for people which are outside the Americas. Should they package butt plugs with? Maybe. Yes. Did he now? You seem to know so much. Does he sell them online as well? Yeah, look, I think it's actually, people, if you're consuming dairy, you're consuming meats and organ meats and stuff like that. It's really hard to, in that regard. And if you're basically maintaining that homeostasis with sufficient sodium, I usually find that most people, they're probably in their diet generally they're getting enough potassium, enough potassium, enough magnesium, and calcium can vary depending on the sort of animal products they're consuming. And then if you're not having bone broths and stuff like that, because then you have to have dairy products. So if you don't have dairy products, you need to, prioritize more of this connective tissue from animals to balance, to get the glycine, to get some of the other nutrients that you would find that you can get from dairy, like the calcium and stuff like that. So that there's people need to manage, what are the foods that they like, enjoy, and sort of manage that in a sense. But yes, it is in a sense because it actually keeps everything in. We used to consume about 10 times before refrigeration existed. We used to pack on the salt on fish, on meats, on everything. We used to pack. We used to even plants that were basically pickled for winter, like cucumbers and stuff like that. That got pickled. We used a lot of sodium for that as well. So it was the go-to thing. Nobody had any issues back then. It's because they were able to hold in all those other electrolytes with sufficient sodium. Nowadays, everybody fears sodium, and they sweat and they lose too much sodium, then they lose more of the other electrolytes because the body's trying to get homeostasis. It's not a very smart thing. There can be other issues that some people can have in terms of sort of mitochondrial damage and other things where they can't regulate there as well. But that's a very small minority of people that are going to find themselves in that sort of situation. The majority of people can. Yeah, see you, John. Oops. Go back. Okay. Nearly lost my spot there. See ya. Good to see you. at the bottom again. Now, if I have missed anyone, hold on, there was Chris. I did miss someone. Hi, Harry. Have you got a document on the protocol for people with CVD high CAC? Not yet. I haven't done the video yet. It does include MK4 high doses to decalcify. So it tends to be very high doses, but it also has to be a very low. You can't cheat, because when you're actually pulling calcium at that rate, you really need to be careful to keep the oxidation products really low when you're doing that. So it's a sort of a two-prong. It also includes a number of phospholipids that you need to be putting back in there for repair. You need to be upping your cholesterol levels. So more eggs, more organ meats and stuff like that are required as well. So it's, a number of that. Yeah, look, I'm trying to put things together in that regard. It is coming. It is coming. But I would say that as a very simple thing, you've probably heard me saying it individually, like Jarrow, the vitamin E for stored PUFA, because it's going to be coming out and it's going to be creating issues. So you need to deal with that. You need basically the MK4, the high doses. You need that as well to mitigate, to deal with that. You need also the other anti-inflammatory things that you need to do to basically keep down inflammation and allow the healing to happen, increase the redox potential. So that's, supporting your mitochondria, because they're going to help you more energy, more capacity to repair. So things of that sort. L-citrulline, again, I hope you're taking notes. L-citrulline, a vasodilator, very important. That's another part of the protocol. A couple of grams of that, 2 grams of L-citrulline. So choline, another thing important. How much choline depends on your genetics. I need more. Some people may only need 1 gram per day. Some may need 2 grams or 3 grams. I usually tend to go as high as 3 grams per day. So, and that actually exports, not only methylates away homocysteine in a person like me that is a poor methylator, but at the same time also exports fat out of the liver and provides sufficient choline for acetylcholine for my brain. So it's looking after all that. So I need a bit more, because I can't even convert methionine to choline or choline to folate. So I'm really fucked in a number of areas in terms of genetics. So I don't know what your state of genetics are. And that's why I say to people, if you really want personalized response, it's much easier to go and do genetic tests and then come back to me and say, Harry, and I'll say, I want you to check these SNPs and give me the information for those SNPs. And then I can respond back and say, you got these and these issues. You need to do this, this, and this. It's really much easier. It's really easy. Once you know exactly what the underlying issues are there, you can just hammer it. So I know I've got, specifically for the MTHFR gene, I've got the worst, the TT or the AA, depending on how you swap them interchangeable, the alleles, in terms of when it comes to, folate and B12. So I've got a bit of a problem there. But I know from the research, from the video that I did and the research, that if you basically bump up your riboflavin, it sorts the problem out. So, but if you don't have that, but you've got the other pathway that's got an issue, maybe the choline is going to be more supportive. And with the other one, it's going to be the B6, which you may want to bump up a bit. I have to bump up both the riboflavin and the B6 a bit. So that's how it will vary in that regard. Okay, back to the oh well. Give me a sec. I'll be with you. And all done. And we've got a new moderator, Daniel. Good to have you on board, mate. Just took us a while to basically sort out. Yep, I can get rid of my email account. That, and I can get rid of that as well. All out of the way. Okay, now what was that? I missed the question. Repeated 3 times. Hats of you, your thoughts. Hats? What do you mean? You. Okay. Question repeated 3 times. Can you just actually put the question in there, and I'll basically answer it. Put it in the bottom. Sorry. It's been fluctuating all over the place. I'm not sure what you mean by hats. Any thoughts on CAC? Ooh, that's high. That is very high. Exactly. So they definitely need to be on a protocol to basically reverse that. That is really high. And they need to be taking definitely L-citrulline to maintain good vasodilation. I'd be prioritizing the vasodilation side of things with an L-citrulline as fast as possible. Send me an email. For a person with Irish heritage, a little gluten consumption historically, do you think oats would be the next starch to eat? Look, if you did it in the traditional way, it's going to be less problematic, but I would still, a lot of us have been slightly damaged by a lot of bad consumption over years. So if you were doing your traditional diet, your aging would go like sort of, let's say your aging was doing this, you're probably been doing this. So you've been aging faster because you've been doing more inappropriate things. Adding some of those things that have some deleterious effects isn't a good idea. You want to really clean up your diet so you basically can come back to a line that's closer to what you would have from your own genetics had. So you've got more damage. Because let me put it this way. Your mitochondria inside them, when you're born as a child, are very dense. So in those folds that you see in the outer, you've got the inner membrane and you've got the matrix where glycolysis, lipolysis, the Krebs cycle sort of reside, okay? And you're dehydrogenating, you're creating water by stripping off all the hydrogens, oxidizing, and you're producing small levels of ATP, and then you're using those positive ions to push them through the complexes, and you're stripping off the electrons as those goes from those positive hydrogen ions, and you push that through the complexes to basically make the pumps work. They need energy, electrons, in the simplest way for me to explain it. And you get a gradient, a potential, protein potential as it's called, and that will go through your nanomotors and actually create ATP. As you consume inappropriate foods, you put more, and you get more deuterium in there, and you get more neutrons, which are much heavier, larger. These isotopes are double the size, and you try to push them through the nanomotors, you break them or damage them. And it's a constant struggle between repair and damage, and your energy levels over time decline. That's why older people have less energy. That's why they sort of struggle to move and stuff like that. They got more and more damage. All those folds have got complexes in a number of spots. And all you're doing is you're damaging those different parts, and you're limiting the amount of those complexes that can actually do that task and generate energy. And, that over time, and not sleeping enough, more blue light, less melatonin, less repair, all these sort of things, add up, and over time. So if you've done inappropriate things and you've already got underlying health issues and all that, why are you going back to foods that are high in deuterium that are basically going to continue the damage or cause more damage? You need to scale it back. And that's why people, when they go on a carnivore diet and a keto diet, they feel better. They feel much better because they're getting rid of a lot of the deuterium. They're getting more energy. Well, obviously, because they're doing less damage. And so they're allowing their body to restore more of their mitochondrial function. And so they're feeling better. So it's not something I would recommend, but it's your personal choice. If you want to add more deuterium to your diet, go right ahead. Who am I to tell you how to live your life or manage your body? Not me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We want to actually hydrate with fat, because carbs dehydrate us. And so that's the problem with carbs, generally speaking. Oops. And my thinking is that deuterium either doesn't matter, or it's better to have higher levels. No, it's not. Higher levels of deuterium. The sweet spot, you don't want too low, your levels to be too low, because it does play a role in the body as a growth factor. Okay? But if it's too high, your mitochondria can't deplete enough of the actual molecules that are coming in, that some of them will have some level of deuterium. So, when you've got the carbon and you've got all these hydrogens stuck to it, those hydrogens are going to be stripped off. That's what all these, the lipolysis, glycolysis, the TCA cycle, that's what they're doing. The Krebs cycle, that's what they are dehydrogenating. They are taking off the hydrogens, stripping them off, so you can oxidize and get some energy from the carbons. And then you create carbon dioxide and you breathe that out, okay? And some of that carbon dioxide gets actually excreted out as a more acidic sort of urine as well. But it's more the lungs than the kidneys. But anyway, it's beside the issue. You don't want more deuterium. Believe me, the more deuterium, if you're a baby and you want growth, yes, you need more deuterium. But if you're an adult, you don't. You want to be in the sweet spot between 130 parts per million and 100 parts per million. You do not want to be, and usually the sweet spot is about 120 odd or more or less. You do not want to be higher than that. You don't want to be too catabolic, and you don't want to be too anabolic, and you don't want to be basically making it very hard for your body, your mitochondria, to maintain a clean water environment. Because if it's got too much deuterium and it doesn't have the capacity to basically deplete that deuterium out of the system, because you're putting too many carbs in, which are loaded with deuterium, and it's got just too much and it overwhelms, some of that is going to get through and damage nanomotors. And the more nanomotors and the less repair you're able to do with age, it means you will get older much faster and you will die much quicker, you know? So deuterium is not a good thing unless you're a baby. And I also checked, Mercola's new supplement, that hydrogen thing that he's talking, infused thing. That's an alkaline thing. Alkaline things tend to have high deuterium, so give them a miss, please. So yes. So he's not really up to date when it comes to the deuterium issues in the mitochondria. Not a problem, mate. You're welcome. You're welcome, Chris. Oh, does he? Don't be that harsh on him. He's special. Hammering. And I've got a new attachment. You'll love this one. Mitochondria. Harry Serpanos, the Whisperer. The ultimate episode guide. Lessons from Harry's videos. Yes. So those parts in there are your matrix. Okay. That's the inner part there. See that inner part there? And these are the folds where your melatonin and also where your complexes are and your nanomotors. So in this matrix is where your TCA, your lipolysis, because remember, all this sort of stuff in the matrix is where it all happens initially, and then the majority of work happens in the complexes that are all through in different parts. And that there is where the protein gradients is actually formed, in those inner membrane areas. Yes. Definitely not in that pit bull terrier or whatever it is. And you had to add a poodle in there as well, didn't you? That's all I need is a poodle. Oh, God. Thanks, mate. It's because, look, your nanomotors are basically complex 5 in the inner mitochondrial membrane, okay? So it's the potential, the protons that actually accumulate there that actually can push through the nanomotors that rotate between 6,000 to 9,000 RPM, depending on the protein, that protein gradients, which is there. And so they will flow through that high speed. And because of flowing at very high speed, if, let's say, through the pumps, you pump some neutrons through, and one of those neutrons gets through, doesn't get the deuterium. So inside the body, in other parts of the body, deuterium isn't a problem. It's in the mitochondria. Okay, so deuterium elsewhere, you need some deuterium for growth as a growth factor. Okay, so it actually is used by enzymes and stuff like that to initiate, to do things, okay, to build things and all that. But inside the mitochondria, where energy production is happening, you don't want it there. You want it to be out. That is why there is that, sweet spot of about 128 parts per million throughout the whole body. It will mean you'll have more. It's a bit like, just think about acidity, your pH. Isn't it it varies in different parts of your body? Why? Because it has a different function. That's why it varies. It's the same thing with deuterium. It has a different function and it varies. I will be doing, as I said, I have promised that this year I will be doing a deuterium light and all this sort of electromagnetism and the whole thing to explain all these things, but it takes a long, that will happen later on. And I don't want to give too much away. That's why I'm a bit cagey. But I'm telling you that it has a growth factor purpose. And in the actual mitochondria, you don't want it there. Even when it's going through lipolysis, through those different 10 enzymatic steps, what the body, when it finds deuterium, it tries to replace it with hydrogen. And then, because in a number of those steps, it also generates water. So it actually creates depleted water of deuterium. Because of the size, the neutrons are bigger than the protons. And when they go through those nano machines at very high RPM, they will damage them. And remember, glycolysis produces 2 ATP. You're getting about well over, 36 in total from your nanomotors. So very important. So stripping off this using the carbon and basically exhaling that out as carbon dioxide, you're taking in oxygen, you're combining the oxygen, to create basically hydrogen ions. And then basically, the hydrogen ions, you're combining them with basically to create metabolic water. And from that water, you've got the sort of makeup to basically then push it through the complexes and strip it off and create those those protons that will go through the nanomotors and the electrons that will flow through the complexes. Because the purpose of the complex is to pump, it's to pump all those protons through and strip off, pretty much from those hydrogen ions to strip off the actual basically your electron for the electron chain. And that other metabolic water that's created in there, what it does is it creates it has a different viscosity when it's very purified of deuterium, and it's got this sort of a very different type of viscous effect. And this viscous effect acts as a transistor. So in order for the electrical functioning of the entire mitochondria, you need this sort of viscosity. And that's another reason for deuterium depleting. So this viscosity works properly. And the things that interfere with that, blue light can interfere with that. You've got, from one angle, you've basically got EMFs that can interfere with that. You've basically got things like certain level of other compounds in the environment. There's a number of factors that can interfere with that. And so, you got to understand the differences between deuterium, where it's located in the body, and what it's being used for. So that's the sort of difference. And that's why you don't want extremely low levels of deuterium in your diet, but you don't want extremely high levels of deuterium in your diet. That is why the sweet spot is between 100 odd parts per million and 130 parts per million. So anyway, we could go on for hours talking about and going into deeper areas, but that will be at a later stage. So, God, I fucking hate StreamYard when it bounces like that. Anyway, I've found my spot. I suspect that's me. Took me a bit. Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed that. I loved it. Even the poodle. Yeah, okay, it's a poodle. Yeah, it's a little weak mutt. The only usefulness to, for poodles is, you know, the as an unproblematic pet for old ladies. Really, it's very easy for them to manage. I'm not saying that other people shouldn't have poodles. I'm just saying that it's much easier for older people to manage poodles. Okay, you know, it's a much easier dog to manage. You're telling me that I'm too fucking old. I need a poodle. You're welcome. That's what those little buggers enzymes do. They're involved in, you know, I mean, you transcript shitloads of enzymes to basically build muscle, to build body, to, you know, it's a growth factor. You know, cancer loves deuterium. It actually uses it as a growth medium to build tissue rapidly. So, you know, why do you think they've actually got a depleted deuterium protocol that's actually been recognized as a veterinary supplement for dogs to reverse their cancer in Europe? They're actually using it. The Hungarians and the Eastern Europeans have been using some of this stuff for years. So, you know, so it's called DDW25, and it's basically recognized. So if you've got some people that have got cancer, you want to get deuterium depleted water to flush out the deuterium to try and get oxidative phosphorylation back working properly and slowly down regulating oncogenes and stuff like that. That's part of the. So there are people out there. Look, there's a mitochondrial one, how to fix mitochondria and stuff like that. I'm going to try and get it out this week. I'm going to really try and put some time apart to get it. And I will try sometime early next month to try and get the cancer one out as well. I know people are, you know, want these sort of things. I mean, especially with 1 in 3 people in America having cancer in their lifetime and stuff like that. I realize it's going to be a big thing and people need the information to basically reverse these conditions. I'm cognizant of that sort of stuff, but you know, I do this as a part-time thing. So I'm giving you a lot of information and all that, but at the same time, I don't, you know, have to be very careful because I don't want to basically say people take this, because if you don't do it as a proper protocol and you do it incorrectly, you can cause all sorts of havoc and issues. So it has to be done the right way. You have to measure certain things. You have to do certain tests and all that. And it has to be explained properly. So people do the protocol correctly and they don't do it in a haphazard and ill-informed or uninformed way and create other issues for themselves. You know, it's like in the old days, you know, people over-supplemented certain things and got into trouble. You know, I don't want to do that just by saying, oh, take this, without explaining exactly how to do the protocol, how to do the measurements and all that sort of stuff. So it takes time to put that stuff together. Sorry, but, you know, I do have a full-time job and a family life and all that, unfortunately. You know, so for you guys, you just have to wait. Sorry. You know, if you're desperate for some stuff, you know, I can occasionally get back to an email, but it's not that easy. Okay. Lost my spot again. I'm getting sick and tired of StreamYard. Okay, so what's Luke saying? It's the old show. The start, the guy named Caesar. Hail Caesar. Yep. Dog Whisperer. Yes, yes. I'm their illustrious leader. Woof, woof. Okay, sort of just like that. My dog wanted to pee in the house because he doesn't do right. Okay. I just wanted him to pee outside. I remember I had a dog when I was really young, German Shepherd. Actually, I had a sheepdog, Anyway, we'll go to the German Shepherd. And yes, it was a problematic. So I shoved its mouth and its nose in its urine, tapped it on the nose and tell it, do not do that again. And it didn't. But I don't know whether it will work on all dogs. So that's just an N of 1. Harry's experience. How old was I then? 12. Yes, well, a problematic 12-year-old. What do you expect? I actually like both cats and dogs. I've had cats and dogs throughout my whole life, so I have to say. You got poodle issues, mate. they've been savaging you, have they? Going for those feathers. Yeah, I know. It's just crazy, that it can happen. They can be quite. They're very loyal and easy to manage for old people, and very loyal to their owners. But they can be really, they can bark quite a bit. They can really be, I actually there's a poodle down the street here, like Augusta Road. There's actually a road that goes straight down, and there's a poodle, and there's another one of those small terriers. And each time I walk past, because I usually especially when I'm jogging past, oh, God almighty, they go off like mad at me. A little thing, fucking hell. What do? You just look at it, you go, I mean, you're this size, mate. You're not intimidating anyone, but, what do? You just walk past and go, yes, more, yes, they can be a bit like that. You could always tell it that going to turn you into, well, the certain parts of the world that they eat. I'll be I won't say anything. Otherwise YouTube will go after me for discrimination or whatever. Where they eat dogs, I'll send you off to one of those. They'll sort you out. Yep, that's it. Yep, that. Yep, the two stable isotopes of hydrogen is basically, your stock standard hydrogen, which is 1 proton, 1 electron, and then you've got deuterium, which has a proton and a neutron, and it's twice the size of a regular hydrogen. And that is basically your most stable, 2 stable isotopes of hydrogen. Then after that comes tritium with more neutrons than you can poke a stick at. Good for fusion reactors if we can ever get it going or happening. Yes, but it's the gradients. It's not. We definitely, I always remind people, if you do get access to metabolic water, do not go too low. It is very catabolic and you will basically damage your connective tissue and everything else. You need some level of deuterium. You just don't want too much. Problem is nowadays people are getting too much, far too much, and they're damaging their nanomotors with far too many refined carbohydrates all year round. We never had so much carbohydrates, and we don't have UV radiation, which depletes deuterium. But, we've got a supermarket which is just full of goodies all year round, sugary goodies, and people just basically can't help themselves. 99% of the population, unfortunately. So it's more about poodles. Are supplemental ketones appropriate for a person with brain fog who either had a hard time getting into deep ketosis or doesn't? Well, first of all, if you're having brain fog and you can't get very easy into ketosis, it's because you've got too many nanomotors damaged. And you will have to listen to my upcoming protocol on how to repair your mitochondria. Very important, because basically you can actually damage where you drop down to glycolysis and pretty much nothing else works. I've got one person that I'm dealing with that is had multiple cases of chemotherapy and a lot of damage, and they basically gave her 5 years to survive, basically, because she's so damaged in terms of mitochondrial. And so for her to go to a lower deuterium level is required, and a couple of other things as a protocol, stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. We're still in stage 1 at this stage. But ketones, don't race after ketones. But if you're having difficulty, I would say you've got probably some mitochondrial dysfunction. But it could be for 2 reasons, and I don't know what it could be. There's another person that I've dealt with, and he basically he dumps ATP, which is similar to a sleeping disease that existed 100 years ago, probably still exists in some parts of Africa. And they actually used to use a certain supplement, and that will be in this video, so I'm not giving too much away. And there are modern day ones that don't have the same side effects that can actually do the same thing in preventing the dumping of ATP that can actually happen as a signaling. It becomes like a macrophage is you've got cytokines. Well, ATPs can actually act as mitokines and can be dumped out to signal and sort of red flag, we've got problems here, telling the body. The problem is that basically takes away a lot of your energy as a consequence. Now, there is ways to inhibit and prevent that dumping from happening. So that will be discussed in that as well, and I've got somebody on that protocol. Okay. We are getting close to the end of this live stream because, my limit for the month and stuff like that. So just so people are aware. So if you've got any quick questions, Harry, if one had access to animal blood, is there any benefit to consuming it? Nah, just salt. Just salt and eat animal organs. You'll get your electrolytes that you need and stuff like that. So, if you're out there in the wide world and you need, fine, but let's not get too crazy about all this sort of stuff. Yep, you're welcome, mate. Yep, a lot of people have in the past blood pudding and blood sausage and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's good. It's good nutrition. I'm actually not saying that people have got cancer or anything like that, but I'm just saying that if the more you compromise over time, many years. I mean, she severely had issues, and the medicine was probably worse. Had she been in a state of ketosis, she probably would have protected more of her body and sustained less mitochondrial damage from the therapy, so to speak. But she was unaware at the time. Do you think cold immersion usually screws people up? No, not really. We're talking about sort of it's got a hermetic effect, a bit like saunas, and these sort of things actually put some stress on the body, which actually increases mitochondrial production and energy production. So they have their place. Exercise does the same thing. Fasting does the same sort of things. It sort of it upregulates these sort of pathways. So beneficial, So in that regard, And not a problem, mate. Thanks for being around. Look, it does cost. If you see the facility in Hungary, it's a big facility. It's sort of a factory facility. So, and the problem is not many people are aware of it. You know, at some stage, some of this information is going to come out. Some of this information of how to do a lot of this sort of stuff is going to come out, but it's going to take a long time before it goes mainstream. Unfortunately, a lot of people are going to suffer before these things become mainstream because you can't patent it and you can't create, companies out there want to create patents. And I mean, Laszlo has been trying to help his friend who's got this company to basically get an FDA license because he's done research on behalf to show that it, I mean, because at the end of the day, you're just removing deuterium. You're just removing more neutrons from the pool of water. It's water. It can't, it's not, but the FDA will not approve it, even though the European Union has actually approved it for dogs. But they also say, unless FDA approves it, Europe won't approve it because they're tied. So they're interlocked like that with the food industry, the drug industry. It's just, very corrupt, unfortunately, is one way of describing it. I would describe it, but, they describe it that basically the different institutions must be in agreement or stuff like that before we can recommend things. What a load of crap. It's just smoke and mirrors on their part. Yep, Bird Brain definitely does need to look after his feathers. Those damn poodles. Yes. Yeah, they've got that problem as well. Exactly. Molt hair. Exactly. What is your solution to your loss of feathers? Do you put special cream on? Please tell us. Yes. We've got about 12 minutes. It's 12 minutes, the last 12 minutes. So get your stuff in. God. Cold. I think I'll leave it. I'll make myself a new coffee after this in 12 minutes time. Yeah, it's too damn cold. Frankie's butt plug oil. Is that what you're buying? Is it T1? You're not buying butt plugs, are you? Mate. Oh, well, I don't doubt the coconut oil would be good for feathers. Yes. Definitely. I would have to say, yep. Coconut oil would be, that lather, the shine. It would be great, You need a bit of a shine. We'll send T1 over to give you a good shine. I think T1 would love to give you a shine. I know there's somebody else that would even love even more. That would be Shell. She's actually gone to bed now, so we can say anything we like. Kitty, do not say anything. This stays here. Whatever you do, at your own risk, if you give her your address, she'll fly over. Mum's the word. You probably don't. He'd be rough as guts. You know, it wouldn't be. It would be damaging to you. It would be definitely damaging. Yeah, it definitely would be damaging. Nah, you definitely don't want it. Nah, it'd be rough as guts. It roughs you up as it is, on live streams. It's a bird can only put up with so much roughing up. It's just not on. I bet Blinky would. Yep. I bet he would love. It's always great to have two of your own personal trolls. Well, guys, we're down to 9 minutes. Any questions beyond giving T2 a hard time? It's unfair. We've got to lay off a bit. Bad T1. Bad T1. Nothing to say. We've got nothing to say. I'll put my dogs up. Woof, 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 woof. Yes, I have to say, actually, the poodle is actually the funniest. Yeah, definitely the poodle wins. Yeah, I would say the poodle gets my number one. Oops. Do you have to ask? It's a grain, but well, it depends how hoppy it is. More hoppy, less deuterium. More grains, more deuterium. So do you like yours with a bit of hop, don't you? A bit of a hop in it? Yes, in cream of tartar. Bad idea for a potassium source. No, actually, I do use cream of tartar occasionally. I don't currently because I'm fine, but I do recommend it for people as a much safer way to add it to like a yogurt and stuff like that, or milk, and then sort of balance it out with the other electrolytes. So yeah, in that regard, some incredible fractional distillation requires to separate. Yeah, it's costly. It's really costly on power. Shitloads of power, exactly. That's the problem. That's why you need a big plant. The one in Hungary, I can't remember now. Laszlo, or was it Colin? He's the other guy that collaborates with Laszlo. I think he actually mentioned it does cost a couple of $1 million, so it doesn't come cheap. And they also have like an industry there that actually they were able to get a veterinary supplement out of it. So they actually sell DDW25 to many parts of Europe and parts of Central Europe like Germany, Austria, parts of Eastern Europe like Poland and some of the other countries. They do purchase metabolic water and do use it. The physicians are aware of it because it goes back to research that was done in the Soviet Union in the 60s and 70s and in other parts of Eastern Europe, especially Hungary, in the a number of decades back. So when it comes to like a lot of the research in blue light and all this sort of stuff comes from that part, where you had scientists that were basically trying to work out how things worked and how to fix things and whatever else. So they were really interested in how it works. They weren't producing pharmaceuticals for companies. They actually were working for research labs, or government research labs, and they just wanted to find out. They were just inquisitive. So, and because it wasn't political, the government didn't interfere and just let them free to be able to do whatever they liked. And so they came up with really some interesting stuff, cutting edge stuff for their time, where science, especially with Reaganomics and Thatcherism, became more commercialized in those countries in particular, but also in other European countries that followed that same sort of having more collaboration with industry. And as a consequence, industry corrupted the science because they had profits that were more important than actually acquiring basic knowledge of how things work. So yeah, that's why things went a bit haywire when the markets, because markets may be good for other things, but when it comes to basic research, markets are a failure because they really interfere in the way things are done. You still need some academic freedom. You still need to have people that have got inquisitive minds and are not thinking about the dollar, but are thinking about how do things work. So unfortunately, we've lost a lot of that. Yep, you can. I don't currently, but you can if you get things like you've got gallbladder issues, you've got general cirrhosis of the liver or some damage of the liver. I've pretty much cut out alcohol. I don't drink anymore. I haven't drank for quite some time. Even to I've given away even my alcohol. So if I'm going to have any alcohol, I've got a protocol that I follow, which is choline and B vitamins, and that is a very rare thing because I've been working from home. It was only used to be ciders at the pub with the guys having a counter meal. I used to have a steak, a rare steak. They would have their sort of chicken schnitzels and all that sort of shit. And I would basically have a low carb cider or something like that. So less of an issue, and I wouldn't have too much alcohol. I don't drink like I used to. So yeah, that's sort of the only difference. So if you're dealing with certain issues, yes, but if you're not, why waste your money? I always see it, if you don't have any real issues, why supplement? I can't see the value of it. There are specific reasons why you would do it, but yeah, if you need it, you need it. If you don't need it, do not waste your money, please. You work hard for your money. So quickest way, load yourself up with caffeine. That's the quickest way. But what was I saying? Yeah. So you don't want to. Yeah, exactly. It is like a distillery. Well, sort of on. Yeah, it's sort of that. Yeah, because it basically you're actually. I think it's called it's a special evaporation type system. Yeah. I probably should try and somewhere I've got a video of I'll have to try and find it. Yeah, exactly. It is it's the quickest way. Exactly. Yep. It is an antagonist. But then again, it depends on, I will detox caffeine 4 times faster because of my genetics, so it's less of an antagonist to me. So it varies on your genetics as well, how effective it is. You like to get to bed. You like to get into dream world, don't you, T1? There you go. You got somebody that takes a lot of, must be repairing a bad liver from too much alcohol abuse. I would say so. talking about decaf now, are we? Well, we're past 3 o'clock, so I'm going to pull the plug. I'm going to go for a walk and then come back and make myself a nice steak. And actually, yeah, I've got that beef steak. Yep, I had pork yesterday, so we won't bother with the pork. I'll leave that for Monday. And yeah, look, appreciate everybody turning up. Thanks for staying. Thanks for your support, and take care. We'll chat next week. And if you're desperate for some information, just shoot me an email. It won't be immediate. Depends on, because I've got other things I haven't replied yet to. So it'll be later or middle part of this week. If it's something minor, I'll quickly look and I go, oh, is that all they want to know? Quick typing and I'll send it. So if it's a minor thing, you'll probably get a quick reply. If it's something major, I'll go, oh, let me think about this before I make a comment. So, yes. You're welcome. Okay, guys. Thanks for being here. Take care, and we will definitely chat next week and have a bit of fun as well, some frivolities and stuff like that, like we always do, and keep well and keep away from T1. He doesn't have your best interest in mind. Keep up the good work, T1. See you guys. Take care. Have a nice weekend, or the remainder of it anyway.